Hey, this is the World Advice Channel 2. What I want to talk about today is a problem with Ryan Kinel, who is a political commentator on YouTube who talks about the problem with wokeism slash left wing media in entertainment. Okay, so for this video, I will explain the problem with him when it comes to deception he's putting out there, as I believe a lot of black people are falling for it. And I, as a result, hope to enlighten people in order to prevent them from falling from this right wing deception that's being put out there. So now I mentioned that, let's get started. So when it comes to this right wing perception I'm referring to, what exactly do I mean by this right wing perception? What I mean by this right wing perception is the fact that all these so called golden age movies that the right wing praise were actually considered liberal for the time. Okay, so now let me explain exactly what I mean by that. Okay, what I mean by that is that all these movies that they tend to talk about nowadays, the left wing, the right wing, I should say, for that matter, um, always talks about, oh, things were so good in the past in the 1990s, the 2000s, blah, 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 blah. The whole, story you hear all the time is that a lot of those things that they tend to talk about, whether it could be movies like Harry Potter, or it could be things maybe that like even I guess you could say them, like from that time period, like I was getting up before, whether it could be movies like Die Hard, you know, maybe I don't know, like easily things like The Terminator, different things out there that might have had certain comments and narratives and so on and so forth that would be considered maybe offensive by today's standards, and stuff, and the list goes on. And of course, Harry Potter, which I think I mentioned before, yada yada yada, was actually considered liberal media for the time. And specifically back to the Harry Potter thing, I remember that the conservatives at the time actually hated Harry Potter. Besides, at the time when Harry Potter was released, which was 2001, I believe, um, you know, the first Harry Potter movie, in honesty, um, to put it bluntly, in honesty, for that matter, uh, in honesty, there's actually a lot of controversies from conservatives at the time. I remember exactly who said that it was not something that they wanted their kids to see because it promoted witchcraft, which apparently was considered satanic and all that type of stuff. Yada yada yada, all that type of stuff for that matter, to put it bluntly. Um, to be quite honest with you, um, and just a whole bunch of things, in all honesty. When it comes to that, media in general was considered left wing for the time. At the time, I remember exactly it was. Even movies that we consider, offensive, even things like Tropic Thunder, for crying out loud, where Robert Downey Jr. puts on blackface, or even things like, like maybe another movie easily, for example, if I could think of one, when it comes to talking about to, things that are, of course, would be considered offensive. Um, another one like I was saying before I could think of, obviously that would be maybe Yes, Believe It or Not, at least when it comes to offensiveness, White Chicks by the Wayans brothers, all that type of stuff, like that stuff was actually left wing media and was meant at the time to pretty much satire and make fun of right wingers and stuff, for that matter, to be quite honest with you. Um, and that's what they seem to have forgotten or just straight up ignore, for that matter. Okay. All that stuff was left wing media. Okay, that's what you would take into consideration that most of the places those things were shot, particularly the biggest state it was shot in is California. That's historically been considered a left wing state anyway. for ages now. So, what exactly are you talking about, in all honesty? Like, what exactly are you trying to get at here? Okay? Conservatives always, for that matter, especially when you go back further, like, we're not even talking about the 1990s and 2000s, but the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, hated violent media. They thought it was corrupting the youth. They thought it was a bad influence. Like, I remember easily one of the things that used to get a lot of hate actually at the time was Western movies, cowboy westerns. Actually, for a period of time, it got a lot of hate. It was considered too violent and this and that. And then after that, it became like gang movies that were considered offensive, whether it could be mafia or even just straight up, the was considered now a classic, but had a lot of hate at the time. The movie Scarface. It to answer your question, okay? The truth of the matter is, a lot of those things, were considered offensive, and corrupting the youth and this and that at the time. So now these are considered movies. Oh, it wouldn't be made today because the left would get offended. So, which is such a stupid remark to make, but that's all those people talk about. So, what exactly are you talking about? Everything you can imagine, whether it's movies, TV shows, or even just down to music that we consider okay today, and there's nothing wrong with it, was considered left wing propaganda at the time. And that's exactly um what I am trying to get at here. Okay, for that matter, to put it bluntly. Okay? What exactly are you talking about when it comes to this golden age? When it comes to, when people weren't offended by everything and this and that, when your side was actually the ones getting offended by freaking everything. And that's why it's good for people to kind of read between the lines and not listen to people like Ryan Kinel, because Ryan Kinel's a freaking idiot and he doesn't know what he's talking about, and he ignores the fact that a lot of this stuff that's being put out there now is just simply rewriting history, which it actually completely is unfounded and untrue when it comes to the thing they're putting out there, when it comes to the message they're putting out there, for that matter. Okay, that is a simple answer. It is simply unfounded and untrue. So, in short, now that I'm done talking about the other point, this I just want to end this video off because obviously there needs to be a message to this video. In honesty, the simple answer to that question when it comes to this video, in honesty, is I just hope this video is enlightening to people and serves as a message to people that this is why it is good for people not to believe everything that they are told and just hear something and believe it, because all the things I mentioned in this video, you can look it up yourself, actually, for that matter, and not just you know, just hear one side and just believe it, okay, if anything, which of course would be the side Ryan Kinel's putting out there. Because that's also the question I want to ask. If these right wingers, are so anti new media and stuff, why don't you hear them create their own shit? Why do you spend all their time just sitting around on their freaking ass just talking about all this type of stuff? Because they can't. Right wingers cannot do it. And I'm not denying the fact that these left wingers, radical ones to be more specific, this new generation of radical ones, are annoying. But at the same time, the truth of the matter is, okay, at the same time, is that the right wingers tend to ignore their own history of just hating the media and trying to be for media. I mean, in honesty, media control and all this type of stuff. And this is why it's good for people to learn to read between the lines and not just believe everything you hear people say, and not just read between the lines, but also do your own research, for that matter. Okay, that is the truth of the matter. Okay, instead of just hearing one thing one person says and just believing it, for that matter. Okay, and that's exactly the truth of the matter. Okay, to put it bluntly, for crying out loud. And specifically, not just people, but specifically our people as black people, because the more we support people like Ryan Kinel, which a lot of black people are becoming right wingers nowadays, the more we do more damage to our community, okay? And that is something we obviously want to avoid, and we want to do our best to think towards the future and obviously um plan for the better, okay, for that matter, okay? And who knows, maybe even create our own media for that matter, so we can create something in a way we like, without having to deal with obvious discrimination that has existed against Black people for that matter in media as we know it. So this is my video now. So I just want to say is that since I'm done the video at this point pretty much, I just want to say I hope you enjoyed it, and just remember, if you like this video and videos like this, remember to thumb this video up and hit the subscribe button. And this is Off the Sane, so we put them out. So bye.